Right, so welcome back to a new guide on this channel, and on this occasion is about the sequencer and some other functions about the KORG Opsix. This is not a review, it's a complete deep dive guide about these features, but everything on this guide is in chapters, so if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. So if you like this guide, like and subscribe, and if you have the money, you can buy me a coffee if you want. Everything is on the description. So this is the volume number 2, maybe you didn't notice, is the second video. The other one, we covered everything else. On this one, we need to talk about the ARP, we need to talk about the sequencer, and some other functions that we get right here, like the user algorithms and everything else, but mainly the ARP and the sequencer. Now, first, we need to start easy. We need to start with the ARP. So if you hold Shift and you go right here, you can have the configuration for the ARP. Now, you don't need to do much. If you don't want to go there, you can go right here, and right here you can turn the arpeggiator. Now, the ARP is super simple. It's a very simple ARP. So as soon as you press it, you're going to start getting it. I'm going to add a little bit of more. There we go, more bite. And you hold the keys and it will just, do the ARP. When you release it, the ARP, it's done. Now, right here on the display, you are going to have several options. The first one right here, the A knob, it's going to be on, but then you have the latch mode. So when you go to latch, it means that when you release the keys, it's going to hold it for you. Now, of course, if you don't want this, you can go back to off. Now, when you go right here to this button and you turn it on, it's going to do the on. But when you press and hold, it's going to start kind of a blinking. So this means you're on latch. And by tapping it once, you're going to be out of that mode. Right, so at the bottom, of course, when I play some keys, you're not going to be able to see the keys, but I'm going to show you right here at the bottom a keyboard so you can see which keys I'm pressing. So, okay, so again, if I do a minor chord, we get a minor chord right there. If it's off, nothing is going to happen. If I press again, I'm doing a minor chord. Now, this, of course, the resolution is going to decide how this is going to be, played in terms of speed. So, if you think about this, you don't have a tempo, you have a resolution. So it's using a tempo behind the scenes. So right here at the top, you cannot see it, you have the top tempo. But in reality, if you do Shift and you go to sequence, right there, you can select the whatever tempo. So if I do it again, and I go down in tempo, the ARP, it's following this tempo. So all the different resolutions that you get right here, they got to do with whatever is that you do on the tempo when you go to the sequencer. So you need to adjust this in order to kind of use the resolution. And you can go, you can go faster or you can go slower. Slower and then faster. Right, so let me just go to something that maybe makes sense. So then you have the different modes. You have the pattern, and for now I'm just going to go to on. So you have the pattern, which is going to be what the pattern is going to be. Manual means that if I play a key and then I play a different key, it's going to remember the order of which we play the keys, and it will just respect that order. Pretty simple. This is a pretty standard ARP. Now, if I release it, we have more modes. You have the up. If I do a minor, it's going to go up, from down and then up. The next one is going to go down. It's going to go backwards. Pretty simple. So then you have the alt. So the alt, of course, is going to go up and down. It's just going up and down. If I turn it off and just, show you what it's doing, it's doing 1, 2, 3, then 3, and then 1, right? Or 1, 3, 5, then 3, and 5. So it's just going back and forward. Now, the other one, you have an alt 2. So this one, what it does, it will just repeat the first and the last note that you play. And if I have to show you what it's doing, is doing 1, 2, 1, 1, then 1, 2, then 1, and 1, 2. Notice that it's just repeating the first one. If I do it a little bit faster, right, and we can go slower. Right, so that's what it does. Pretty simple. Now, if I go right here to random, it's just random. It's just gonna do a random. Right, so the next one is going to be trigger. Now trigger, it's not like the other ones. If I press play a chord, notice what it's doing is just, kind of playing the chord several times. It's not going through the different notes of the chord. Now, of course, if I go faster or go slower, we have a kind of a sequence, but an ARP, but it's just going to be with a chord or whatever keys I'm holding. If I'm holding 2, it's just going to do 2, and if I do 1, it's just going to do 1. Right, so that's it. You don't have more modes. It's a pretty basic ARP. Now I'm going to go to manual, and then you have the gate right here. So when you go to the gate, of course, and let me go something a little bit faster right here. Right. So of course the gate by default, and this one works just like the mini log. I guess it's 75%. So yeah, something like that, 80%. So this is the default gate, but you can go down and make the notes shorter or make them super large. Pretty simple, and this will apply to all the notes, of course. Right. So then you have the octave. It means that, and let me go to maybe right there. So if I'm playing a C minor chord on this octave, what this will do, will just, do it on one octave, what I'm playing. But if I do 2, it's just going to do it on the octave I'm doing, and then 1 up. And if we keep going up, it's going to go and do it 3 octaves up. And it's just like a loop of 3 octaves of the whatever it is that you're doing. Pretty standard controls, and you can go up to 4. Right, so pretty simple, pretty standard controls that you get on any arpeggiator. I guess the ARP is like the most basic ARP of all the, all this range of KORG. Then you have, of course, the sequencer, and the sequencer is it's cool. It's super cool. It's a little bit better than the Minilog, the one that we get on the Minilog, and this is my opinion. So now we're gonna go and talk about the sequencer. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the sequence by holding shift. You can go to sequence. Now you don't need to do that. I'm gonna go to home, right? We are just gonna be on home. Now you have several ways of using the sequencer. If you go right here, notice it says favorites. And if it's on favorites, you're not gonna be, and for now it's gonna turn it off, you're not gonna be able to use the sequencer. You need to go to the sequencer. Since we are on an init patch, nothing is loaded. So it doesn't matter if you do play, nothing is gonna happen. So first, of course, we need to know how to record notes into each step. And now you have 2 ways of doing this. You can record step by step, or you can do a live recording. You can do play, and while you play, it's going to be recording whatever is that you record. Now, first, we're going to start easy, and we're going to do with the step by step recording. All right, so again, this is pretty straightforward. It's just if you have a Minilog, this works just like the Minilog. And I'm using the Minilog as a standard because it's the most selling, the best selling kind of a synth of the last 5 years or something like that. So, okay, so how can you add steps? So when you go right here, when you are on the sequencer and you need to be on the sequencer, you need to do a rec. So when you do a rec, it's going to stand on this one. Now you can stand on a different one, and it's going to start recording from there. But in this case, I want to start recording from here, right? So I'm going to go home and I'm going to start recording there. So when you play a key, it's just going to remember and assign it to that step. So if I do 1, 3, 5, 5, the same thing we've been doing, every time I play a note, it's going to advance and remember which note I'm playing or adding to this step. So once it's done, it's going to be completed. You can only do 16 steps. You cannot do more. And that's it. You're recording your sequence. If you do play, of course, it's going to do your sequence. Now, whenever you go right here and you kind of shift and tap, and you go to the first screen, notice that right here, you can change the tempo just like we did before. And it's just going to go slower. We're going to talk about this section much later. Right. So when you are not at home, notice that when you're at home, the steps are green, and it's a little bit different when you are on shift and sequence. They change to purple. So when you can do on this mode, when you're on sequence enabled, you can kind of tap on each step, and it's just gonna let you know what you're doing on each step. And remember that this needs to be purple because this one is enabled. If it's disabled, it's going to do a different thing that we're going to be discussing in a minute. Now, of course, if you don't like what you did, you can clear all the steps. So if I clear the steps and I'm going to be holding clear, you can sweep the whole thing and kaboom, your sequence is gone. If I record everything again, I'm going to do 1 through 1, 3, 5, 5. And I always do the same thing. I'm going to make a mistake right there. Because everyone can remember this. So if you do play, there's a mistake. So what you can do, you can clear steps only. You don't need to clear the whole thing. Maybe you want to clear this one or this one. You need to go to clear, hold it, and then select whatever is that you want to delete. I'm going to select the 4. I'm going to select the 8. I'm going to select the, I don't know, the 12. And then I'm going to select the 16. Once you release, it's going to delete whatever information you have there. So if now we play it, we get just that. And that works. Now, at the same time, you can go and hold clear and you can select multiple steps and it's going to delete them all when you release the clear that you're holding. Now, the same thing we did before to record on each step, what you can do, you can go and stand on that step. When you go to rec, you're going to select that step and you can add nodes to the empty steps. So I'm going to go to that one that's empty and do whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go here and do something random. I'm going to go there. Record there. There we go. And this one right there. And I'm missing the 14th. And I'm just going to do that. So, of course, what it's doing is just recording the empty spots. I kind of mess it up right there. All right, so I'm going to go over there to the 14th and record something. There we go. Now I'm going to go out and I'm going to do play. And there we go. All right. Now I'm going to go back to clear and I'm just going to kaboom, delete all of this. And I'm going to select this as well and just delete everything that we have, including this one. And I'm going to be standing on the number 1. So what you can do, you can duplicate steps. So let's say I'm going to go to rec and I'm just going to play one note. So then if I go out of the rec, notice that right here, you can select this one and you have a duplicate function or a duplicate button. So with the rec off or play off in this case, what you can do, you can hold the duplicate or whatever it is that you want to call it and keep holding it. Now, first you need to tap on whatever it is that you want to copy. Since I want to copy this one, that one is going to be being copied. So it changes to blue. So then you need to tap whenever you need to, you want to paste it and then you release it. So then you play it and we get it right there. So again, super easy. Now I'm going to record my 1355 again, and I'm going to do it for 8 steps. Now, what if I wanted to duplicate the whole thing that I have right here on my first 8, and I want to copy and paste it on the next 8? Well, you can do it. I'm going to go out of the rec mode, and I'm going to hold the duplicate, just like we did before. But this time, I need to kind of press or tap the whole thing, the beginning and the end, at the end and the end at the same time. The whole thing I want to copy paste. And then you need to tap wherever you want to paste it. And when you release the dupe, then you're just going to go and paste whatever it is that you have right there. Now, when you are in this mode, you tap something, you're going to be able to audition whatever it is that you're doing. And notice that right here, it gives you a visual representation of which key is on each step. You have 6 lanes. We're going to talk about this in a second. We're going to go really deep dive because this is a big part of the sequencer. But if I go to home, remember that everything turns green. So you have 2 main functions, or actually 1 main function when you're on this green mode, and it's muting steps. If I go right there and I start muting this one, and this one, and I don't know, this one and this one, is going to mute whatever step. Now, muting, it means that it's just going to mute the step. That's all. It will not skip the step. It's just a little bit different. Right, so of course, if you mute it, you can unmute it by just tapping the same button again. Right. Now I'm going to start over again. I'm going to go all the way right there. So what you can do, you can record ties, something very common on any sequencer. So I'm going to record and I want to do a tie. Now my 1, 2, my 1, 3, 5, 5, I'm going to do the same thing, but the 5, 5, 5, 5 are going to be tied. So this one and this one are going to be tied. So I'm going to record 1, then 2, and now I need to do the 5, but this one needs to be a tie. So what you will need to do is that whenever you want to record the tie and you know that this one will be tied to the next one, when you press the note, you need to hold the note that you're pressing, and then tap the next step. So my case is 1, 3, 5, 5. This is going to be the key. I'm going to press and hold, and I'm going to tap this one and release it. And notice that it's just going to assign a value right here and move on to the next one. So if I play this, nope, I did rec. So if I do play, notice that this note is longer. And if I go right here, if I go out of the play and I go right there, notice that the third one right here says tie. So you have a visual representation of what you're doing. So this one is tied to this one, and this one, of course, is not tied, but you get a tie. So again, if you wanted to do the same thing, I'm going to be standing right here. I'm going to do record. And again, it's the 1, 3. The 5 is going to be a tie. I press and I hold and I tap on the next one and I release. I'm going to do the same 1, 3, then 5. And I messed it up, so I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna do 1, 3, 5. I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna press and hold and just release it. So right there, I could have messed it up. So it doesn't mean that you cannot fix it. We can use this. We will talk about this in a second. But if you go right there, this one needs to be a tie, right? And it's not a tie. So when you go to gate, and right here, you can go all the way to 100%. We will talk about this in a second. And you can make it a tie and just fix the problem. All right. Now, I'm going to do clear. And as you can see right here, I'm going to go to the step number 1. So you notice that it says a step and then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It means that on each step, you can store up to 6 different keys, 6 different voices or 6 different notes. So if I do the same thing and I just do a chord, it's going to store the chord. Right? It's just store the chord. So if I inspect this on the viewer, we're going to get, those 3 notes all over the place. So you can add chords or, single notes, and you can do up to 6. Now you have a different way of doing this. And for now, I'm going to go and clear everything again. And I'm going to stand on the step number 1. So I'm going to do rec, and I'm going to record a low C on all the steps. Right, so I'm just going to do that. So if I play it back, we just get a low. Now, if I'm maybe going to go, and maybe it's too fast, I'm going to do a tempo of 100. Something a little bit slower. All right. So when you go to shift and the modes, remember that you do have something right there, right? You have a visual representation of what you're doing on each step. And if you tap it, it's going to tell you what you're doing. All right. So what happens if I do rec again and stand right here? So when you do rec again, it's going to record whatever it is that you did, but it will not erase what you had from before. So now if I wanted to do this, notice if I go to step number 1 is stacking the notes. The C5 is going to be the first one, and it's going to move the one we had before to the second lane. So by doing this, maybe I can go right here and add some notes. Maybe I'm going to do something like that, and it's going to be going to the 3. And notice that the notes are added. So if I play something, so you can go step by step and just add notes, right? Maybe go right there. I'm just going to be adding some random notes. I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing, just adding some random notes. So if I play it, so remember that when you add notes in this mode, when you do a rec, it's not going to replace the one that you had before. It's just going to stack whatever new note you're playing. Now, of course, if you make some mistakes, you can go to the screen and you can navigate through the different lanes and just fix the note that you messed up. So, but we will talk about this in a second. First, I want to cover the live recording. So I'm going to go and just clear everything we have right here. Okay, so live recording, it's kind of super simple. It's pretty much the same we've been doing, but we do it live. So when you do a rec and you do play, you're going to hear metronome. Now, you can disable the metronome if you go to shift and you go to global and you just keep scrolling down right here. With this one, you select the value. With this one, you change categories. And with this one, you select the property. So if I keep going down, at some point, it's going to say sequence. And notice it says right here, metronome and metronome level. So you can just turn it on, turn it off, or turn it on, or just, kind of control the level. So yeah. So if I go back to sequence, now notice we are playing, but we are also recording. So you can just do... And it's just going to record whatever it is that you do. And right here, I'm kind of on a funny position right now. I get out of the rec mode, of course, it's gonna remove the metronome. So I'm in a funny position. Right now the camera is right here and I am right here. So I'm just stretching and trying to play the keyboard. It's just killing my back, but So right there, you just can, create whatever it is that you want by doing a live recording. So that's how it works. Now, but remember, at the end of the day, you can go one by one, inspect what you did, and just, fine-tuning your sequence. And this is something that you don't get with the mini log, for example. You don't get this screen. You cannot go one by one and just changing all the values. All right, so now we need to start talking about the sequencer options. Notice that you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 different pages. So the first one is going to be pretty simple. And for now, I'm going to do some rec, and I'm going to do the 1, 3, 5, 5 that we've been doing because you can do this at home. That's why I'm using always the same thing. So of course, we already know the tempo. You can just shift the tempo. And right here, notice it's just giving you a visual representation of what you're doing. Now, of course, you have different modes. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But since you're using tempo, you can still, like the arpeggiator, use the resolution. So if I go faster, it's just going to go faster and faster, but based on the tempo. Right. So of course, you can change the length. Right now, we are using 16 steps, but you can just move it to 8 steps, or even, 4 steps, or maybe 2. Right. Pretty simple. Then you have the swing. It's just gonna go and do swing. Right. So let me just go back to 0. And now we need to talk about these options that we have available. Right, so I'm gonna go right here and I'm gonna do play. So as you can see, you have this mode. And you have 2 arrows. Maybe it's not so clear on the screen because it's a little bit small, but we have 2 arrows pointing to the right. Let me just adjust the camera a little bit. There you go. Now it's super clear. So you have the mode and you have 2 arrows pointing down. So this means that the sequence is going to go that way. It's going to start on the 1 and go all the way to the 16. Pretty simple. But then you have other options. And the other options, some of them make sense and some of them make no sense. So then you have the other mode. This is going to go backwards. It's going to start on the step 16 and then keep going to the other side. So I'm going to do play. And starts on the 16 and goes down. Right. So then you have more modes, and the other modes are just going to be super cool. So this is the back and forward. If you do play, it's going to start on the 1, go to 16, and then when it reaches 16, it's going to repeat this 16 step and go all the way back. And it's just going back and forward on the different steps. Right. So then you have the next one, and this one is going to be, notice it says right here, it gives you, tells you the name of this one. It's going to be, let me just go there. It's going to be the center. So the center is a little bit weird to explain. It's very simple. But if you do play, you're gonna hear that it's just a little bit weird. And maybe at some point, you can see that it's kind of a playing like this, starting from the sides and going towards the middle. And maybe you're saying, oh, it's playing 2 steps at the same time and then kind of going to the center. That's why it's called center. But not really. What it's doing is playing the first, then 16, then 2, then 15, then 3, then 4, and so on and so on and so on. So it's doing that alternation. So then you have the other one, and this one is the even and odd. So this one does the same thing. It's just the same thing, but first it's going to play the odd, which is going to be the 1s, and then it's going to be playing the 2s, which is the even, then the odds, then the even, then the odds, and so on and so on. So it starts on 1, and it starts playing the odds because it's 1, and then it will play the 2s. It's all the evens, 2, 3, 6, 8, and so on, and then it will go back to the odds, and it will just move forward through the sequence, just like that. Right. And then you have random, and of course, this is pretty self-explanatory. Right. So those are the modes, and they are super useful because you can just create a sequence and maybe just check if you get some magic, right? Some magic out of there. All right, so then finally you have the key trigger. So if I play a key, nothing happens. We need to do play in order to play the sequence, right? So pretty simple. Now, if we go to key trigger and we go to on, this means that it's going to play it for you when you play a key. So if I play a C right here, it's going to start playing the, and I'm playing it right here. I'm just pressing it. It's going to start doing, playing the sequence. And when I release, it's just going to stop doing the sequence. If I play again and hold that key, one single key, it's just going to run the whole sequence. Now, what this can do, the key trigger, it can also transpose. So if I go to a different key, it's just going to transpose that. And if I keep going up, it's just going to keep transposing, and so on and so on and so on. But the trick is that when I release the keys, it will stop doing the playback. Now, the next one, you have another one that's called latch. And this is pretty much the same idea, but you don't need to hold. Whenever you play a key, I'm not holding anything. It's just gonna latch it and do it for you. Now, still, when you play a different key, it's just gonna latch it, but it will transpose and do the same thing. Now, the only difference is that you don't need to hold the keys. That's the difference. Right. So that's it, pretty simple. So when you turn it off, it's going to go to key trigger off by default. So you cannot do it anymore. Right. So we need to, right now we need to talk about the sequencer node, and it's the second one, this one right here, the second panel or our page on the sequencer. So I'm going to start again with the default sequence, and I'm going to do 1, 3, 5, 5 all the way. Right, so we know what we get. We've been doing it. So, okay, so I want to talk about what we get right here. So, of course, we already know that you get 6, you can add up to 6, notes or, notes per step. And right here is going to tell you what you're doing. And whenever you tap on each one, it's just going to give you information of what you're doing. But also, you have other options like the velocity, you have the gate, or you have the start. So we need to cover that right now. Okay, so the first thing is that when you tap on a step, right here at the bottom, it says active, you just can turn that off. Same thing right here. If I turn it off, it's going to turn that step active, or, turn it off or turn it on. Pretty simple. Now, the other thing that you can do, of course, you have lanes, and this is how it works. That's why you have lane. Each of these ones are going to be a lane. So when you go to this, it's going to be going to the different lanes. So what you can do right here is to kind of fix or change whatever node that you did for something else, and and it's just you can do that. You can go to whatever step you wish and just change it or make tiny adjustments. Right. Now, on top of that, you can go to a different lane and just add notes manually. So let me go to that one and maybe this one, and I'm going to do a C4. Yeah, so you can go step by step and keep adding things. And this is one of the most useful features, because sometimes when you do something or you make mistakes, or maybe you want to check how it would sound with the different note, you can do it manually. It's great. Okay, so cool. So then you have, of course, the velocity, the gate, and the start. So I'm going to start again with a clear, clear sequence. I'm going to clear, I'm going to do rec, and I'm going to do the 1, 3, 5, 5 again. And I'm just going to do it for 8 steps, because if not, it's just going to be a little bit too much. And remember that you can go right here to the first one, to this one, and you can adjust the length of the sequence, and I can make it just 8 steps, right? Just 8 steps. And there we go. So when you tap on this one, or this one, or this one, or this one, it's going to go to the sequence. And if you go to the second panel, of course, the lane is going to be right there, and it's just going to tell you what you're doing. Now, then each lane is independent on some features. So you have the velocity and you have the gate. So if I go right here to maybe the first one, the lane, and I keep, going to different notes, notice that the velocity was different. And it's because I recorded this with different, with different pressure. So the velocity, it was different every time we recorded. Now, of course, you can adjust the velocity on each step from here and just, do whatever you want with the velocity. Maybe do it all the same, or, whatever. It doesn't matter. But the cool thing is that you can go one by one and just adjusting the velocity. Same thing with the gate. If I go to the first one, maybe I want to make the gate really short. And of course, this is going to change how it sounds. So the first 4 are going to be super short. Now there's a tiny trick. If I select this step and you go to shift, is going to, you hold shift and you tap the step, is going to go by a quarter. So it's 25, then 50, then 75, and I'm holding shift, of course. Then it's going to be 100, and then it's going to be a tie. So it's just an easier way of just adjusting all your gates for all the different steps. And it's because, again, at the end of the day, you have 8 lanes. What happens if you're occupying the 8 lanes on all the different nodes? It's going to be crazy to set the gate in all the different values. So for example, if I go right now and I clear everything, again, I'm just going to keep the 8 steps. I'm going to clear everything, right? Just everything is cleared. And I'm going to start on step number 1, make sure that that one is clear as well. And in this case, I'm going to record all C's, and I'm going to go to a low C. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we have a low C, right? So if I do play, we can hear the low C. But now what I can do, I can go to this step, for example, and adjust the gate to be a tie. And this one is when, again, I can go right here and just make it a tie. It's going to be a little bit easier going there, and then tie, and then tie, and then tie, and then tie. So if now I do play, it's just going to be a sustained note. Now, of course, this is kind of a useful, not useful, but it's useful because you have 6 lanes. So now if I wanted to go to the 1 and I wanted to add different notes, maybe I can go to lane number 2 and add a different note. And of course, this one could have a different velocity and a different tie from the other ones. That's why I'm telling you, all of the lanes are just kind of independent. So maybe this one can be a short tie, and this one, maybe I add a different note, can be a long gate and a different velocity. Same if I go right here and I add more nodes. Maybe I'm gonna make it shorter. And you can go one by one, adding nodes and changing the velocity. And by going to the different lanes, you can see that the values are just different. So if you think about this, all the things that you can do, you can, have 6 lanes and offset the velocity and the gate and the nodes. And yeah, it's just, you can do a lot of things with this. It's not that simple. The sequencer is kind of very powerful, but the thing is that it's time consuming because you need to go here and make the adjustments. That's kind of the bad thing. And the other bad thing is that you only have 16 steps. It would be cool to have a lot of steps and maybe go out of the synth to maybe a module or a rack or something like that and use the sequencer. So then you have the start, and the start, it's just like the other options. It's going to be an individual option. So maybe I'm going to go to number 1. We know we have two notes right there. So the start, it means that this node, whatever is that you're doing on that lane, is going to be offsetted from the start of the step. So right now, everything starts at the very beginning. But maybe I just want to kind of offset it. So I'm going to go to the C4, and as we move to the start, it's going to start offsetting the start of that node. And notice that now you can hear it. So it sounds like a swing. And it's because, of course, you're moving that node towards the end of the step. Of course, as you move it towards the end more and more, and if it has a long gate, the note's still going to be shorter because you're moving it to the end. So if I go right there, notice that the note is longer. So you can only do that much. So as you move it, and I can even go to the first lane and delay the start and get that effect. Same if I go to this one, maybe I can go to this one and delay the beginning of that one. And just like that, you just can create different sounds and different rhythms. Right. Okay, so of course we could spend an hour doing things right here because all the things that you can do. But I much prefer to keep moving forward. Of course, this is completely up to you. And again, like I've told you before, is very time consuming. It's going to take you a lot of time just creating something cool and just adjusting all the things. It takes time. Now, I want to move on to the next thing, to the next page, which is going to be the motion recorder. This is something that you get, is a feature that most, all of synths are implementing today. And you can record the motion, something that, some option, some parameter that you have. You can record a motion that you do. And this is something that you get on the MIDI log, for example. But the thing is that on the mini log, since all the controls, you can have them on the main panel, like the cutoff and everything else is just right there in front of you. It's a little bit easier to do motion sequence. On this one, you have the volumes, the ratios, but that's it. You need to go through the menus to select something and then record the motion. So it's just a little bit, it's not that straightforward, but you can still do it. You can modulate whatever you want. For example, let me go again and do the 1, 3, 5, 5. And I'm going to start again and go to the sequence and make it 16 steps. There we go. And I'm going to start over and do the 1, 3, 5, 5. Right, so if I do play, we get, the 1, 3, 5, 5, that's fine. And I'm gonna go to the motion sequence. And notice it's kind of a listening, but it will not do anything, it will not record. If I move something, it's just not recording anything, right? We are just adjusting the values live. But maybe I wanna go to right here, and when you do rec, and you're right here, and you move something else, it's going to record it for you. So I'm gonna do rec, I'm gonna start moving this, and notice it's just recording my motion. So we are adding a modulation, and it tells you right there what you're using. It's the operator 2 level, and it goes up and down. It depends on what you record. Now, if you want to record it again, you can record and just adjust the values. Right. So you can do this with whatever you want. Let's say you want to go to the filter. And this is what I was telling you before. Now you need to go to a very specific place to select what you want to record. Maybe I want to do some cutoff with some resonance or something like that. But I want to record a sequence of doing something like that. So if I go there and I go do rec, there you go. So now if I go right here to the sequence, I'm gonna go there. We have two. We have the operator level, and then we have the cutoff. Right, so just like the other things, this works in lanes. So the first option is going to be the selection of lane. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can do up to 6 motion sequences. Now, of course, when you record something, if you don't like it, of course, you can delete it. But what it lets you do, which is something super cool, it lets you change the destination. Right now, we are using the filter to do this motion, but maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to do something else. So I'm going to go to the destination, and now the destination is going to be something else. And notice that you have a lot of options, and you have categories and values, just like we do with the mod matrix or the virtual patch. So you have the envelopes, you have the operators, and so on, and so on, and so on. You can select, you can do the motion first with maybe some other thing, and then you can change the parameter right here. So if I go there, maybe I'm going to say maybe operator number 1 or maybe the 2, and I can just change the ratio or, maybe do that. If I do play, it's modulating this. Actually, it's the transpose, but right, so super simple. Now, of course, what happens if you want to adjust the values? This is what you get, this value right here. So if I do play and I move the value, notice that it's adjusting kind of alive, but it's just not that clear. And why it's not, if I'm moving it, it's moving this part. And it's because this works step by step. So if I do the 1 and I move this value, it's going to be adjusting the value for the step number 1. But if I go to the 2, I can adjust the value for the 2, the value for the 3. And just like this, you can shape your motion sequence on a step by step kind of a, basis. Right, so I'm going to start with an initial patch, and I'm going to start over, and I'm going to do the rec, the same rec, and do the same thing we did before. And it's because I want to show you the next thing on the chain, which is going to be right here, this one. We already know the value, we already know the destination, we already know the lane. So I'm going to go to lane 1, and what I want to do that motion recording. Maybe it's a little bit fast. Let me just go to the sequence and change it to something really slow, something like that. We can of course change the resolution if you wanted to. Let me go to 100s and then go slower. There you go. So okay, I'm gonna go to sequence, to the here to the motion recorded, and I'm gonna record this motion. Right. Pretty simple. So whenever you record something, notice that all the steps, they will have different values and they will tell you what value you're using. But also you have a curve. Now the curve is going to be a step-by-step kind of a thing. If I go to this one and I change this one to step, the value is going to look a little bit different. Notice that it looks like a building. Now the next step, it's going to be linear. So that's why we see kind of a squared motion right there, a value, but then it just goes back. Now if I change the second one to step, we can clearly see that this one again starts to look like a building. And if I change this one to step, and you can change it while you're just doing this. I'm gonna go to step, and notice at the top right here, when you change the type, it's gonna tell you what you're using. And you have different things. You have the step, which is gonna be like this. You have the logarithmic, which is gonna be a tiny curve. The curve is a little bit different from linear. Let me do again. We go right here to exponential. And yeah, notice that the curve is just like this. And then on the other ones, of course, you have the linear, but you have the other one, which is the logarithmic. And then this one is again, it's just a different shape. But the cool thing is that you can use different shapes just to do different things. You can make a combination of the different shapes. Maybe on this one, I'm going to do a step and just go on a step fashion. And then go back to, I don't know, maybe logarithmic, and just finish with that. And then you can create, very complex and controlled motion sequences. So if I do play, play, it's going to completely change the motion sequence. Right. So that's how it works. So pretty simple, right? You can select the destination, what you're going to be doing, the lane. You can record up to 6, and then you can edit whatever is that you're doing on your motion sequence. Okay, so the last thing we need to talk about is going to be the sequencer utility. This is the last page of all of this. And it's a little bit confusing at first, but it's really great and it's very useful. So first of all, I'm going to start over. I'm going to do clear on all of this. I'm going to record, and now that we know how this works, I can go and maybe do something, a little bit better. Start from the first one and do record and do the same thing we've been doing. We don't need to do something new. So when I do play, notice that I've recorded everything again, but the sequence, this is still on. And maybe I don't want to keep the sequence. I want to delete it. How can I delete this? So that's going to be the utility. If you go to the utility, notice that you have a target, but also you have something that it's blinking and it's asking you, should I execute this? Yes or no? So this is kind of a batch or a utility in this case, or something that runs a function that will do something. So you will say no if you don't want to do it, or yes if you want to apply whatever it is that you select right here. So you have a target and you have a function. So you can target the nodes, but in this case, you can target the lanes and the lanes. And notice it says empty end lane. And then you have several options. You can do clear, you can do duplicate, you can do copy, and so on, or set a curve, and so on, and so on. So in this case, what I want to do, I want to clear, right? I want to remove that one. So if I wanted to remove it, I want to go yes, and then it's going to ask you, do you want to clear the lane 1? Yeah, we want to. So now if I do play, we are back to what we had from before. Super simple. Now I'm going to go faster in this case. I'm going to go right here and I'm just going to maybe do it a little bit faster. And I'm going to go back to the sequence, to the last one, to the utility. Now, of course, you can mess with the lanes. I'm going to show you a couple more things in a minute, but you can also mess with the nodes. And notice that when you select the nodes, you have a function and then a value. So, for example, it says start on the 1 and end on the 16. So maybe what I want to do on this one, I'm going to go and select the first 4. And what I want to do, I want to transpose, or you can change the velocity, or you can nudge, and so on, and copy, and so on, and so on. So maybe I just want to transpose it. And I'm going to transpose it down by 12. So this is going to grab the first, second, third, and fourth step, and it's just going to transpose it minus 12 semitones. When I do yes, it's going to do it for you. So you don't need to do it manually. That's why this is great. Now what I can do the same thing, but this time I'm going to start on 4, or maybe on 5, and I'm going to end on 8. Right, it's just going to be 5, 6, 7, 8. But in this case, I'm going to go plus 12. And if I do yes, and just like this, you can just, change whatever it is that you want on kind of a batch. Now I'm going to do the same thing that we did before. I'm going to do a rec, and I'm going to do play, and I'm going to be recording my motion sequence. So I'm going to go to the sequence, and we can see how the sequence looks. Now, let me do the stop. So if you go to the next, to the last one, the utility, and you go to the lanes, you have more options than clear. What you can do, of course, you can duplicate it and then assign a different value. And then it's just asking you what you want to do in this case, and then copy value and so on and so on. But what you have is a set value, and right here, let me just show you, it's super cool. You can set a curve for all, and notice that you can change it right here, and you don't need to do one by one. So this is like a batch utility that you get. Now the coolest one is going to be the assign. So it's going to do a ramp, or it's going to do a saw, or it's going to do a triangle, and so on and so on and so on. So you have a few. In this case, I'm going to do a ramp. So if I select the step 1 and the step 16, what it will do, it will just create a ramp from the 1 all the way to the 16. And of course, right here, you have the value and the offset if you want to offset it. But I'm going to say yes. And if I go now back to the motion sequence, notice that if I play it, it's creating a ramp for me, so I don't have to do it manually. And you have other options right here, of course, as well. You can select, of course, the value and the offset, but you can do a saw, a triangle, and so on. A sine wave. Let's do a sine wave. Why not? Right. So the utility is a great thing to have if you want to make some global changes on your whole sequence, and you don't have to go one by one, making all the changes. All right, so that's it. That's pretty much the whole sequence. Of course, now you need to do some exploring, and you need to create your own sequences. And remember that when you go to each patch on the Opsix, pretty much each patch is doing a sequence. So maybe you can do some playing and see what they are doing right there, how they are offsetting it, or how they are using the motion sequence and everything else. And you have some very creative sequences. Right. So, okay, we need to talk about the last thing of this series, of this video and the whole series. So we need to talk about feedback and about how to create a user algorithm. But first, I need to explain the feedback. So we know, let me go all the faders down. I'm starting on an initial patch. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the algorithm number 32. And we know that when we go to the number 32, all the operators are going out. But the number 6 has a feedback option, so it can feedback itself. So, okay, so we kind of know this. But also, we know that when we go to different operators, we have this FB option. So they can feedback as well. But why do we get the symbol right there? Why do we get that feedback on the number 6? We can already do it from here. Well, this is an additional option, and this is because you're using this synthesizer. And this synthesizer has different modes. So for example, if I go to the number 6 and I know that this sounds something like that, and I do maybe a sine wave and I do feedback, I know it sounds like this, right? We're going to get feedback and we're going to get something like that. We kind of know. But also the number 6 has that function, that can feedback to itself. That's why we have that, self-connection right there. So why do we care if we can do it from here? So this is, again, an additional option. And it's because now we need to start talking about the MISC section that you have right here, that it's super useful. So if I go to the MISC, you will have, some options like the program pitch. Maybe you're going to talk about this in a second. But then you have something that says algorithm and then feedback. So, okay, so why do we get this? So if I do the same thing and I go right here to this feedback, I get the same thing. I get the same feedback. So what's the point of having it right here, and what is the point of having it on each operator? Now the thing is that, again, this is an FM synthesizer, and it can do that, and that's one of the features. But again, we could use other modes, and the other modes, they don't have a self-feedback. So maybe on the number 6, we are going to be using, I don't know, a wave folder or something like that. And we are going to be doing some gain, so we can do wave folding. But we cannot do self-feedback from here because we are not in FM mode. We are in a different mode. But knowing that the number 6 can self-feedback, we can go to here and say that the number 6 is going to self-feedback. That is the whole point. But if you're again on all the other operators and you're in FM mode, they all can do self-feedback by default. Now, if I go to the other ones, the other options, this one are going to be pretty simple. For now, I'm just going to maybe do a sine wave. So the program pitch, and this is about the program, like the whole thing that you're using. So you can, of course, transpose, and this happens to the whole program. And again, you can change octaves if you wish. Then you have the bend, how much you're going to be bending if you go to the bend up or the bend down. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You have an LFO to add a little bit of, wobbling to your pitch. And even you can use it with a control to do that. Pretty simple. Now the next one is going to be the program MISC. And this is, again, the self-feedback that we've been using on the number 6. Right? But then you have a level right here. And this level is going to be the level for the whole program. Now, right here, you have a volume, but this is the master volume. You have it right here at the top. So that's the main volume for the whole synthesizer. This level is the program. So it's all of this before it goes into right here. So of course, if you do a lot, it's going to affect when you go to the effects. The sound's going to be a little bit different because you're just kind of going really hard before you go to the effects section. That's pretty much it. And then right here, you can have the phase. So right now, whenever you play a key or play many keys, the phase of all the voices, they start pretty much the same at the beginning. But you can set it to free, and now the phase is going to be whatever it is, or you can use the random, and the phase is going to be random for each. You notice it sounds different when I play a key. Right. So then you have this option. It's going to be the lo-fi. This is going to hard to hear. So we don't have a lot of difference when you enable on. So the lo-fi, pretty much what it does is going to add a little bit of offset to some of the parameters that you have right here. It's trying to emulate kind of a vintage synthesizer. So it adds a little bit of noise to the waveforms and everything else. This is what it says on the manual, of course. It's just not that, obvious. Maybe much less using, sine waves. Maybe if we do something like that. Can you hear the noise? I can actually hear the noise. And if you look at the spectrum, if you take a look at the spectrum, notice right there, on the higher frequencies, you see some peaks right there. So, well, that is the USB. That is a ground loop. But if I enable this, notice that we get some noise. So this is the lo-fi. Yeah. So old synthesizers, specifically, old digital or, any analog synthesizer or digital in this case, like the DX7, they give you a kind of a noise floor. They have a noise floor. So since this one is just super modern, it's super quiet. But you can add that, that noise if you want with the lo-fi. That's pretty much what it means. So I'm going to go to an initial patch and I'm going to show you something else. And it's maybe a good idea to start an initial patch. And I'm going to go to the operator number 1. That is the only one we are using. And I'm going to change a little bit of feedback, a little bit of wave. I'm just going to try to make the sound a little bit more kind of noticeable. And I'm going to go to the envelopes, remove the sustain, and I'm going to make it kind of a pluck. Right, so pretty simple. So let's say that maybe I'm going to go to something more. So let's say I like this, right? And what I want to do, I want to take it to the other operators. So maybe I want to take it to the 3. I want to have the same thing on the number 3. So if I go to the number 3, what I will need to do is to go to the 3 and try to remember what I did on the first one and trying to, match the envelopes, then match whatever we did right here on the modes and everything else. Now, you don't need to do this. If you go to the MISC, you have an operator util. So right here, we can run a function. This one works like the sequencer, when you can run a function and make some changes. So the first one is going to be copy, and then key track, and then EG, and then OP. So OP means everything that it's related to the operator. So what you can do, you can copy from the 1 and then paste it to the whatever. So if I go here, I'm going to copy the 1 and paste it to the 2. And when you do yes, it's going to copy that. And now if I go to right here, notice that maybe we get on the, I copied to the number 2. Let's do it to the number 3. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to be copying from the 1 to the 3. Right. They're going to go to mode, and notice that number 3, it's completely equal to the number 2, even with the envelopes. So you don't need to do it manually. You can just copy and paste whatever you have. All right, so let's go to the user algorithms. If I go to an initial patch, load to whatever, initial patch, and I go to the last algorithm is going to be the user. So you can create your own combinations. So you cannot argue that this looks super confusing, and it's really not. Once you learn it, it's just really not that confusing. I'm gonna kind of take you all the way. Now, when you go to user, notice that the options right here is gonna say algorithm user, but the options right here don't change. If I go to the whatever other, maybe the number 1, we still have course, then the Q, and then the reverb, then the attack and the decay. So we cannot manage the user algorithm or create a new user algorithm from here. So these are, the global functions. So where can we do it? Well, we go to Shift and we go to the MISC, and right here you have the user algorithm. So when I do yes, it's going to take you to the algorithm edit. So what we're going to try to do, and I'm going to give it a thought, instead of creating our own algorithm, we're going to try to copy the one, we've been using all along, which is going to be the number 1. And sometimes that's the best way to learn. So, okay, I'm going to give you a chart right here on the screen showing you the algorithm number 1, and we are going to try to emulate that one. So, okay, so we have the 1 and the 3 coming out. So those ones are carriers, and the number 2 is going to modulate the number 1, and then we have the 6 going to the 5, and the 5 going to the 4, and the 4 going to the carrier, to the number 3. So how can we do this? So right here, when you go to this section, you have 2 pages. So the first one is going to be the matrix. So the matrix is going to be about who is going to be modulating who. But it doesn't say who is going to be the carrier. So if you go to this one is going to be who's going to be the carrier. So the name of this one is the direct out. So notice that you get all the different operators, and for now they are all off. And if you go here, we can see that they are all off. So if I go on, the first one is going to be on, the second one is going to be on, and the third one is going to be on, then on, then on, and then on. So notice that they are all red minus the number 2, and then we're going to talk about why this one it's on a different color. But at this point, all the operators are going just out. And this is, why this you get this on this one. It's something about this. Let me just go right here, and I'm going to go to self. Let me just go there and turn this one off. So now they are all red. It means that this one, it's kind of like the algorithm number 32, where they're all going out. So yeah, that's pretty much what we are doing. We are saying that all operators go out. But in this case, this is not what we want. We want to replicate the algorithm number 1. So we know that the 1 and the 3 are the carriers. So I'm going to turn them off, turn this off, turn this off, and turn this off. So now the 1 and the 3 are the carriers. So now once we know which one is the carrier, we need to go to the other one. And this one, we decide what is going to happen with the modulators, who is going to modulate what. So now notice that when you go right here, you have 6 knobs. And you have a pattern right here. It says self. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But then it says 2, to 1, then 3 to 1, and then 4 to 1, 5 to 1, and 6 to 1. So all of this is about the 1. Who is going to be modulating the 1? Pretty simple. So right here you have the chart of all the 6 operators. So if I go right here, notice that we are standing on the operator number 1. So if I go right here, we're going to be changing to the operator number 2. So right here, we can decide who will be going to modulate the number 2. Is it the 1? Is it the 3? Is it the 4? So everything is about the number 2. Who will modulate the number 2? And as we keep moving forward through the different operators, then we can decide who will modulate who, right? All right. So let's go back. We know that we want to replicate the number 1, the algo number 1. So the number 1 is a carrier that's already happening, because we have the out and we can see it right there. Now what we need to do is to decide, or just to let the synthesizer know that the number 2 will be a modulator of the number 1. So when we go to the number 1 operator, right here we have the options. Who's going to go to the number 1? And if we take a look, the second one is going to say 2 to number 1. So now if I go to the 2 and I say this is the modulator to the number 1, and you can of course go in betweens, but 100% is just by default, it's going to be the 2 is a modulator of the number 1. So we have the first part of the algorithm. So this is how it works. Right. So if we keep taking a look, on the example that we want to recreate, we know that the 6 is going to go to the 5 is going to go to the 4, and then we have the 3. All right. So if I go there, we're going to keep going, and then we have the 6. So everything is about the 6. The 2 is going to the 6, the 3 is going to the 6. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to go to the 5. So if I go, maybe let's go in order. So we are on the number 2, then we are on the number 3. So who's going to be going to the number 3 directly? What's the first operator? It's going to be the number 4. So then we just find the number 4. It's going to be this one. So the number 4 is going to go to the number 3. Right. So then if we keep looking, the number 4 is going to modulate the number 4. The 5 is going to modulate the number 4. So then I go to the operator number 4, and I'm going to decide who's going to be modulating the number 4. And if I find it, it's going to be this one. So the 5 is going to go to the number 4, and we go all the way up. Right? So that's simple. It wasn't that hard. Now, then we go to the number 5, and we need to decide who's going to be modulating the number 5, and it's going to be the number 6. So we go to the 6 operator. 6 is going to 5. So now we just replicated the algorithm number 1. So once we do so, we can actually even compare this. If I go all the way down, just like this, and maybe I go there, and I go there, and there, and I play something. Maybe it sounds like that. Let me just go up in volume. Right, it sounds like that. So if I go, let me just double check that the operator number 6 is we are not doing feedback. Yeah, cool. So this is what we have on the user algorithm. But if I go to the algorithms and I go all the way to the number 1, it sounds completely the same. It's because we are doing the same thing. We are just replicating. So if I go back to the user, it's completely the same. So then let me just go to the edit again. Once you go out of the edit mode or on the MISC, on the user algorithm, you're going to need to press yes to edit the one that you have available. So notice that one of the options is going to be self, and it's that self feedback that we talked about earlier. Now, if we go to the operator and we are using FM mode, we don't need to use this self feedback on the number 6, for example, because we already know that the operator number 6 can do self feedback if we are in FM mode. But if you go to the operator number 6 and you change it for a wave folder or something like that, you don't have self-feedback. So you can enable that self-feedback from here. So if I go up, this is self-feedbacking, and we are not using the feedback that we have on the operator, even though we are using FM on that operator. So if I go to mode and I go to the number 6, we are still using FM. Okay, so we are done. We just covered most of the synthesizer. So now you know how to rule this, how to create your own user algorithms, how everything right here works, and how to control everything, even the sequencer. So now it's time for you to go out to the world and explore. Now, if you watched the first guide and the second guide, this one, congratulations, man. This was a long time. It took a long time to record, and I know that these videos are really long, but try to go on details so you can really know your synthesizer. Because once you know this, since this is so specific and very detailed, the synthesizer, I mean, you can create, super cool sounds, but you need to spend some time learning it and knowing the things that this can do. And of course, now you need to do a lot of experimentation, going to the different algorithms, trying the modes, trying, checking the different effects and doing, using all the things that we've learned. And this is going to kind of take you to the next level with this kind of a synthesizer. So hopefully all these guides were useful for you. And remember to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, because this took a million years to record, and it's going to take a million years to edit because it's super long, and maybe you want to buy me a coffee to say thanks, you can go to the description. You're going to find links for PayPal, for Patreon. Maybe you can be a 1 month patron, or maybe you can do a YouTube thanks. That, really helps. But just liking and subscribing, it's enough help. But if you have the money and you want to do it, you can buy me a coffee. All right, so see you on the next one.